Born in the Democratic Republic of Congo, he is a former MLS soccer player and now personal soccer coach. He is the founder of Kingdom Hope, a nonprofit organization dedicated to developing leaders. Speaking on the topic, Setback for a Successful Comeback, Triumph Over Tragedy. Please welcome to the stage, Steve Zakuani.
It's honestly such a great joy for me to be here. You know, I've spent most of my life in front of crowds, playing in stadiums all over the world, speaking to companies now, but this particular meeting, for reasons you'll be made clear in a little bit, is one of the most important days of my life, just because of the man who founded this whole thing, how he impacted me. So I don't have many screens, many slides. My idea was to come here and just share my stories, because the journey I've been on, I was born in the Congo, and the village I was born in, you can't get to it today. The hospital I was born in doesn't exist, but I beat the odds to become a professional athlete, which less than 2% of people get to experience. So I want to share my story, show you how I got to where I got to, and along the way, I'll give you 3 lessons, because my topic is, overcoming setbacks and tragedy. I want to begin with a cool story that took place almost exactly now 8 years ago. I just spent 2 years playing college soccer in Ohio. After my sophomore year, I was drafted #1 in the whole country. That means out of thousands of players, I was picked #1. I signed my first pro contract with the Seattle Sounders in Major League Soccer. I just moved to Seattle, never been there before. Really, really beautiful place. And when I got there, I had one friend in the city. And this friend came and got me about 2 days after arriving there. He said, "I want to show you a new home. I want to take you on tour of your new home." We got in the car. I'm riding shotgun. My friend is driving. And then out of nowhere, he pumps the brakes suddenly. No red light, no stop sign, no car in front of us. He just stops the car really quickly. And I was so confused by my friend. I look at him to kind of tell him what's going on, and he's not even looking at me. He's looking out of the window, and he's going crazy, pointing out the window. Just then, there was this massive bus going by, and my handsome, smiling face was on the side of the bus. And I couldn't believe it. A young boy born in the Congo now has his face going on the side of a bus here in Seattle. 6 years to the day before that, I was a teenager in London, England. After school, myself and 5 of my friends, I was 15 years old, we stole a motorcycle. My first time riding a motorcycle. We rode about 2 hours. Everyone had a good time. And then I said, I want to go one more time. And this time when I got on the bike, I instantly lost control. And I crashed into a car. I didn't think it was the worst crash. I tried to get up and walk, but from my right knee down, nothing. I collapsed onto the floor. Went to the hospital. My father came in and said, this year coming up is very important. In about 12 months, my son can sign his first professional soccer contract. How long until you get my son to play soccer again? And the doctor, I'll never forget until I die, his words. He looked at my father and he says to him, "Play?" He says, "Sir, we are going to do our best just to have your son walking again." And the diagnosis given at 15 was that I would never walk because I had severed too many nerves underneath my right knee. So the point is, how do you go from having you will never walk again to being the #1 pick and having your face on the side of a bus in downtown Seattle? What happened to me in that 6-year period in between that could take you from your nerves are too badly damaged, you will never walk, to being the #1 pick out of thousands of players? June 12, 2005, I was a 17-year-old boy in London, England. Life was going nowhere. Hadn't played soccer in 2 years. Left school with no qualifications. Was doing nothing with my life. I had one teacher that believed in me, a Jamaican teacher. His name was Mr. Paul Goodison. And he told me, "Steve, I want to take you to a business leadership seminar that's happening on the east side of London." I lived on the north side. He came and picked me up. We drove there. And once we got there, I became very upset. Because it wasn't a business leadership seminar. He had tricked me. This was a church. And I hated church. And when I got in the room, it was a massive Nigerian church. And the pastor of the church introduced the guest speaker who came on the stage. It He was a man from the Caribbean. And the man came up on the stage, and I was just so angry. I was on my phone. I said, listen, church is about 2 hours. I'm going to waste time on my phone. It's going to be over soon. I get to go home and play with my friends. And when the guest speaker, began to talk, after about 10 minutes, I put my phone down. After about 20 minutes, I leaned forward in my chair. After about 30 minutes, I was ready to go on the stage and kiss him. I had never heard anybody explain life in this way to me. Anybody. And I sat there, and before I knew it, tears began to come down my eyes, and I began wiping them away. They said if it's your first time hearing the speaker and being at this event, he has a brand new book, and you can get a signed copy. I was the first one in line after the meeting. And I stood there, we shook hands, I took that book home. For the next 6 months, I read that book every day. Every day, still have it to this day. I tore through that book. I found every video I could. Anytime he came back to my city in London, I was there. I kept going there. And he began to, through his teachings, to train me to believe that the doctor said one thing, but I'm going to play again. I wrote down in a little notebook, I will play professional soccer again. That became my goal. One story in particular inspired me. There was a young boy who grew up in Middle America. He grew up in such a small town, and he heard about this company that was kind of getting big called Microsoft. And he wanted to apply just for an internship, not paid, just an internship. And he went to the interview. Interview went well. At the very end, the guy said to him, okay, young man, give us your email address, and we're going to send you the information. He goes, oh, I live in a very small town. We don't have email addresses. And the guy says, you want to work at Microsoft? And you ain't got no email address? Get out. Go. Get out. And he left very upset. He says, I just lost my chance at an internship. And when he got home, he realized, I got 3 months of the summer to go. What can I do? And he just thought to himself, we grow these amazing vegetables in my mom's back garden. And he took some of the tomatoes that people loved, and he began to sell them door to door. And he saw that the demand was growing, and through the summer, he made a lot of money. So he dropped out of school the next semester, and he began to sell more of those vegetables. Eventually, he began to dominate the whole region. Within 5 to 7 years, it was nationwide. Eventually, years down the line, it became global. And he became a multi-millionaire of one of the biggest organic vegetable companies. A few weeks ago, he was giving a speech just like this, and when he finished, he got off the stage. A young man came and said, sir, your story was so inspiring. I want to be just like you. I want to take you to lunch. How long are you in town for? He says, I'm here just for a couple of days. He goes, can I take you to lunch? He goes, sure, take me to lunch. He goes, can I have your email address so that I can contact you? He goes, I don't have an email address. And the guy says, you became this big, this rich, this successful, with no email address. Do you know where you'd be if you had an email address? He says, yes, I'd be an intern at Microsoft. The first lesson I want you to know that I learned as a teenager is what you have is already enough. What you have is already enough. He was waiting for the big company, the big star, to give him a big break. And all along, it was in a red vegetable in his mom's back garden. So when I heard, as a teenager, I looked around the house because I was waiting for teams to give me a chance to try out, and no one gave me a chance. There was this old plastic bag, and in there were these muddy soccer boots that I hadn't worn in 2 years. I took those boots out, I cleaned them over the sink, and I began to email 300 teams around the world to give me a chance. 9 replied, and I went to all 9. Had no money, have no idea how I got there. I went to 7 countries, 9 teams. Every single team told me no. One coach in particular took me in for a meeting, and he said, I wanted to tell you personally, I'll never forget his name, or his face. He says, I wanted to tell you personally, stop trying. You will never play pro soccer. I can just tell by the way you run. That's what the coach told me. But what you have is already enough. Those boots, I kept using them. Eventually, long story short, a scout from a college in America, from the University of Akron. Akron is a city right by Cleveland, hometown of LeBron James. That's why I went to college. He came to watch my friend. I happened to be at the practice, and he offered me a full soccer scholarship on the spot. Took the scholarship, went there. Freshman year was okay. Sophomore year exploded. Led the whole country in scoring. ESPN, Sports Illustrated, NBC. Everybody came to campus to see this young African kid from London who was killing it on campus. Eventually, I went to St. Louis at the Major League Soccer Super Draft. The #1 pick on the stage, got off the stage, did about 200 interviews, signed my first pro contract, 400 Facebook friend requests. I was so tired, long day, my dream came true, got to my room. I said, I gotta go sleep and just rest. I said, there's one more thing I need to do. This is a true story. I went into my laptop, found my old email address. I found the email of the coach that told me you will never play pro soccer because of the way you run. Went on ESPN homepage, took a screenshot of my face, #1, attachment. I emailed this coach. I said, not bad for a guy who can't run. Until this day, he has never replied. I check every day. I swear, I check every day. Before I went on that tour of 9 teams in 7 countries, I took some of the best soccer stadiums in the whole world and put them on my mom's fridge. So that every day I'd wake up, I would see them on the fridge. After signing my contract and arriving in Seattle, every time I arrived in one of the stadiums, I always thought, the thing from the fridge is real. My second lesson to you is, what you see is real, it just hasn't happened yet. Everything you are seeing, I guarantee you it's real. I've experienced it too much in my own life. All those stadiums from the fridge came out, and I was standing in them during my life, in front of thousands of people, and I couldn't believe it. But this was before 9 different teams all told me to my face, you will never play. But what you see is real, it just hasn't happened yet. I arrived in Seattle, similar to college. First year was okay. Second year, explode, take off. Lead the team in scoring. One of the stars of the league. Pre-season poll came out. Top 5 player. Everything's going great. I think life is about to get amazing. I'm going to get that big European contract. My 3rd year as a pro, 6th game into the season. We're playing a game in Denver, Colorado. 3 minutes in, I received the ball. A guy comes in with a tackle, and instantly I knew something was wrong. How did I know? Because when I landed on my back, my leg was pointing in 2 directions. Broken leg, nerve damage again. Taken off the field on a stretcher, back of the ambulance, driven to the hospital. I was one of 3 players in the whole league that Adidas had given the right to design their own custom shoe. And I was wearing those beautiful white shoes. When I got to the operating room, the doctor says, we're going to have to cut your shoes to operate you. I couldn't believe it. My beautiful white shoes. We did the surgery, woke up the next day. The general manager, the owner, the coach were in the room with me, making small talk, trying to keep my spirits up. Just then, the doctor come bursting through the doors. Nurses behind him. We have to go back in. We've had complications. Your nerves have been so badly damaged. If we don't try to save them, they will die. And that's what leads to amputation. 5 surgeries in Denver, Colorado. They said, we can't help you. Flew back to Seattle, Washington. Landed on the tarmac. Straight to Virginia Mason Hospital in downtown Seattle. 4 more surgeries. They weren't sure if it worked. We've done what we can, you're on your own. About 6 months into my rehab, having a very hard time. I was one of the top players in the league, and now I have to be on a cart just to go grocery shopping because I can't carry my groceries. I went on a trip with that speaker I'd heard back in 2005. His name was Dr. Miles Monroe. I'd come to the Bahamas about 6 years before that, 5 years before that, and I said, I just got to say thank you. After I signed my pro contract, I just want to say thanks. And he had no idea who I was. I told him, I met you in 2005. You did this, you did that. I've watched every talk you've given, everything. And we stayed in touch. And so when I got injured, he told me he's going to be in North Carolina, and I flew there right away. We sat in the car, was going to some event somewhere, and he hadn't seen the video of my injury. And I advise you not to watch it because it's a horrible injury. The thing went viral on YouTube just because of how the injury was. It's still the worst injury to be seen in our league. And I'd sent Dr. Miles an email saying, I'm having a crisis of faith. I'm struggling. How could this happen to me? Just this long complaining email. And we sat in the car, and he was on the way to the event. I showed him the video, And he laughed. And I was so confused. I was so mad. Why is he laughing? This is the worst moment of my life. And he laughed. And he didn't say a word. We got to the event. He spoke. After the event, he called me to the side. He says, "You want to know why I laughed?" I said, "Yes, sir. I want to know why you laughed." He said, "When you sent me the email, you said you were having a crisis of faith and that you might lose your faith." He says, "When I saw that injury, I laughed. Because if that causes you to lose your faith, then your faith was only as secure as the health of your right leg." He says, "Son, that's not faith, that's convenience." And then he left the room. And I just sat there. That's not faith, that's convenience. If the health of your right leg causes you to lose your faith, you never had faith. It was convenient for you. And that changed my rehab. I went twice as hard. I began working harder and harder. Eventually, after exactly 500 days of being injured, and I now know who was behind this. My comeback game was on national TV on NBC. It was against the same team and the same player that had injured me. 500 days after being injured. I came out onto the field, and it's the loudest anybody has ever heard that stadium in Seattle when they announced my name to come back on the field. I only played about 5 minutes, but it was the best game of my life. After all of that struggle, when I woke up the next day, I had 500 messages, and they weren't from fans of soccer. It was pastors and parents and teachers who said, "I used your story as a lesson in my sermon. I used your story to teach my kids about perseverance." And I learned from all of that, that what you struggle with privately, you will overcome publicly. Because the struggle is never for you. There's always people watching. And that's what I learned. All these people had sent me messages. And I couldn't believe that my story, a young boy from the Democratic Republic of the Congo, grew up in London, England, 15 years old, you'll never walk again, could somehow inspire all these people. Messages from all over the world. It would not be right of me to finish this talk without giving one lesson that I learned from my mentor. Through those conversations, and especially through my injuries and my rehab and everything I came through, there's one quote of his that always kept me going. And when I think of the setbacks I'm still going to experience, the tragedies that are still ahead, when I think ahead and think, how can I best prepare myself against what's to come, I think of this quote from him. He once said, "He who cannot see the ultimate will always be a slave to the immediate." And what he meant by that was, if you don't have an ultimate goal, then anything that happens immediately in front of you will enslave you. And so the best defense against setbacks and tragedies is a clear vision. If you have a clear, established vision, then anything that immediately happens in front of you, it means nothing, because ultimately you see where you're headed. And that's what I learned from the biggest setback I ever had in my life. It made me run back to the vision I'd established in 2005 when I first heard him speak. It made me run back to all those days carrying one pair of boots across 7 countries. Eventually, Adidas paid me 6 figures to wear shoes, but I used to carry them in a plastic bag. I haven't bought shoes in 10 years. The best defense against setbacks is a very clear vision. My encouragement to you is we're all going to face setbacks. We're all going to face tragedies. Things are always going to go wrong. If you wait for them to go wrong and get ready, it's too late. Get your vision clear now. For he who cannot see the ultimate will always be a slave to the immediate. And the last question I leave you with is the question he asked me. Do you have faith or do you have convenience? And I think that's a question we all need to ask ourselves every single day. And I'm personally at the point where everything I'm building or working for could go wrong. I could lose every single thing I have. and I'd still believe. Because my faith is just that. It's no longer convenience. You will suffer setbacks, you will suffer tragedies, but my encouragement to you is, what you suffer privately, you'll overcome publicly, because the struggle is never for you. Thank you very much.